Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing my February wrap-up. So for February, I actually participated in Pharaoh Feb, where I read only fantasy romance books. So what I learned from this is, one, I didn't read nearly as many books as I typically do. Normally, I read around 15 to 20 books a month. This month, I only read 11. However, all of the books besides one were 5-star reads. So I'm going to continue reading fantasy romance. It is one of my favorite romances, and I feel like I kind of stepped away from it last year. And I love fantasy romance. I love just having a magical world and a romance, and it's perfection. So anyway, I'm so excited to talk about these books with you guys, considering I loved almost every single one of them. But yeah, if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Thursday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit the notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram and Goodreads, both linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's talk about all of the books I read in February. All right, so starting off with the books I read for different read-alongs. So first up we have A Court of Thorns and Roses, and this is by Sarah J. Maas. So me, along with a few other romance booktubers, have been rereading this series, and oh my gosh, I love it even more on my reread. So if you're unfamiliar with A Court of Thorns and Roses, we are following Farah. And Farah is a human girl that is living on the border of the Fae lands. Now, Farah's family is really struggling. So Farah is the only one who is able to hunt to try to find food for her family. So one day when she is out hunting, she accidentally kills a Fae, mistaking it for a wolf. So when the High Lord of the Spring Court comes and wants payment for the death of his Fae, Farah agrees to go live with him. So the first book is very much a Beauty and the Beast retelling. And while I do absolutely love the first book, A Court of Mist and Fury, the second book, is perfection. This is my favorite book probably of all time. I just love the slow burn romance in this story, and it also deals with healing and it's so good. It's so good, and that's all I can really say. So I highly recommend, if you have not picked up this series yet, definitely do so. So in March, for the read-along, we're going to be reading A Court of Wings and Ruin, and then A Court of Frost and Starlight. And I will probably also be reading A Court of Silver Flames. So definitely join us for those live shows. They're going to be so fun. But yes, I just absolutely love this fantasy romance series. And next up, we have From Glen Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. So I am currently co-hosting a read-along of this series with a few other booktubers. I will leave all the information down in the description below. I'm obsessed with this series. So if you're unfamiliar, this series follows Poppy. Poppy is this girl that is being raised in isolation, getting ready for her eventual ascension. Now, we don't exactly know what an ascension is. We just know it is some sort of ritual. But like I said, Poppy's been raised in isolation. She is super lonely. She's only allowed to talk to a few of her personal guard, and everyone else in this castle pretty much pretends she doesn't exist. She wears a veil everywhere she goes, so no one knows what she looks like, and it's just a pretty rough existence. So one day, Poppy decides to sneak out and have a little fun. So she goes out in disguise, and that is where she bumps into Hawk. Hawk is going to be her new personal guard, and the story kind of goes from there. I love this series. So it is like a paranormal fantasy romance. We have vampires, we have werewolves, and the romance between Poppy and Hawk is just so slow burn. And I love how our male main character is just so funny and charismatic, and I love him. He is one of my top book boyfriends. But yeah, if you have not read the series yet, definitely do so, and I hope you guys join us for the live shows. So this next series is actually YA fantasy, and it has been a while since I've really enjoyed young adult. However, this series is amazing. So this is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. Now, Stephanie Garber is also the author of the Caraval series, and I actually DNF'd that series. I know it is very widely loved. However, I just couldn't get into it. I didn't love the characters. That is not the case with this series at all. I'm obsessed. So this series is following Evangeline Fox, and Evangeline Fox lives in this magical world, and she is living with her stepmother and her stepsister. Now, Evangeline is in love with her best friend. Unfortunately, her best friend has just agreed to marry her stepsister. Now, Evangeline is devastated, so she decides she is going to make a deal with a fate. Now, in this world, it is widely known you do not make deals with fates. It does not turn out well for you. They are tricksters, and it's just normally a bad idea. However, Evangeline is just so desperate to stop this marriage that she makes a deal with Jax. And Jax is the Prince of Broken Hearts, and he says that he will stop this wedding as long as Evangeline will give him 3 kisses of his choosing to 3 different men. So Evangeline ends up agreeing, and the story goes from there. And this series is just so good. So I did enjoy this first book. I think I ended up giving it like 3.54 stars. However, the sequel, The Ballad of Never After, is probably one of my favorite young adult fantasy romances. This reminded me so much of A Court of Mist and Fury. You just have that tension and angst, and I really can't get into it because it's going to give away spoilers, but just know this is one of my favorites. So if you are familiar with my channel and you typically like the same books I like and we have similar reading taste, I highly, highly recommend picking up The Ballad of Never After. And next up was one of my absolute favorite reads, and that is Between Wrath and Mercy by Jess Wisecup. So I saw people talking about this book for a while. A lot of people saying that they love the fact that it had a more mature heroine. Our main character in this is in her 30s, and I loved that aspect of the book. I find it's very refreshing to see a more mature character. Typically with fantasy romance, the characters are older teens, young 20s, and I liked seeing someone who was like my age portrayed in a book. Now, I love this story. So the story is following Emmeline, and she is stuck in this loveless marriage. Now, luckily for Emmeline, she does have a daughter, and her daughter is her whole world. So all she really wants to do is protect her daughter because her sister died in a very upsetting manner, and now Emmeline is very cautious of the same thing happening with her child. Now, really unfortunately for Emmeline, is her daughter ends up being kidnapped, and Emmeline has to ask help from the bloody Prince Rainier. Now, we find out that Rainier and Emmeline actually have a history, and that kind of plays out, and we find out more about it as they are both hunting for her daughter. And this was just so good. I love a pining hero, and that is Prince Rainier the entire time. He is just trying to beg forgiveness, and I absolutely love that. Also, the ending of this book was not expecting. I just sat in like shock when I got to the end because no. So I am so looking forward to the second book, Between Despair and Hope, I believe, to be released in audio. I heard it's supposed to come out by the end of next month because I need to know what's going to happen in this story. But yes, this felt super unique and I really enjoyed it. So highly recommend if you have not picked it up yet. One of my favorite reads of the month. And next up, I read Lady of Darkness, and this is by Melissa K. Roehirch. So I had never heard of this story before, but then one of my friends on Instagram messaged me and said, hey, I know your reading tastes very well. This book was just released via audio, and I think you'd really enjoy it. And I am so happy they did that because I love this book and more people need to read it. So this book is following Scarlet, and Scarlet has been adopted by the Assassin Lord. So Scarlet and her 2 other adopted sisters have been trained to just torture and kill people, and they're very, very good at it. So after something happens that displeases the Assassin Lord, he confines Scarlet to this one kingdom. So she is pretty much caged, and all Scarlet wants to do is get revenge on the person that killed her mother, and she believes this is the Fire Prince of the Fae. So that is what Scarlet is trying to do. She's trying to get a way out of this kingdom. Also, she's still having to do work for the Assassin Lord in terms of like killing and torturing people, and she's trying to find out information regarding the death of her mother. So then this general appears, and this general is actually better at killing than Scarlet is, and she starts to believe that he might be able to help her in her goal. And the story goes from there. So the best way I can describe this is it is so similar to From Blood and Ash, but also felt like a completely unique story. It had all of the aspects of From Blood and Ash that I absolutely love, along with a lot of like new things in terms of like different creatures and paranormal aspects, and I love this world and cannot wait to continue in this series. I believe this is a 5-book series. I'm not sure if it is finished yet or if there's still books coming out, but I do know that all of the books will eventually be released in audio, so that is very exciting. And last up, we have Vicious Bonds by Shorna Williams. So I've read other romance books by this author and have really enjoyed them. Wanting Mr. Kane is one of my absolute favorite age gap romances. However, I believe this was Shorna Williams' first attempt at fantasy romance, and I wasn't a huge fan. However, I think that if you primarily read romance and want to try fantasy romance, this would be great. So we are following Willow, and Willow is this woman who is stuck in an abusive relationship. She also has recently lost her twin brother, and she's just depressed. Along with all of this, she has been hearing the same guy's voice in her head. Now, she hasn't shared this with anyone because they're gonna assume that she is slowly losing her mind. So one day when she gets home after having some very strange dreams, she ends up taking a substance, trying to unwind, And when she wakes up, she's in a new realm, and across from her is the guy whose voice she has been hearing in her head. We find out that he has actually been hearing her voice, and the story goes from there. Willow has to find out everything about this new realm and is trying to find a way to get back home. So, what I liked about this book is it reminded me so much of Peaky Blinders. Apparently, the author was very much influenced by that show, and you can really tell the main character in this has all of the Thomas Shelby vibes you could possibly want. Now, the things I didn't love about this book, it felt like a mafia romance that just happened to have a few like fantasy romance tropes thrown in. I feel like none of the tropes are really fleshed out. We don't know enough about this world, and I didn't love it. However, like I said, I think this is really good for new fantasy romance readers, and I would recommend trying it out. Personally, it just didn't work for me. Alright guys, so those are all the books I read in February. Thank you so much for watching, and please let me know down in the comments below if you have read any of the books I mentioned, which one's your favorite. And I said this already, I post new videos every Thursday and Sunday, and if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye!